It begins on a winter night, when the cold carries sound farther than usual. Sirens roll over the Black Sea like surf. In Odessa, lights stutter, then die. Blocks of apartments vanish into darkness, as if the city has been erased with a single swipe. Above the coastline, you can trace the arcs and zigzags of air defense tracers, blinking against a sky that's suddenly very busy. Russia unleashes one of the biggest barrages of this winter, a swarm of drones and missiles programming towards substations, switching yards, and the steel-boned heart of Ukraine's southern power grid. It's the kind of attack meant to make a country shiver. Instead, it makes it grit its teeth. By morning, the scale is clear. Vast outages around Odessa and the southern regions. Water disruptions, emergency crews fighting fires where downed debris found soft targets. Kyiv calls it a massive strike on energy, with more than 450 drones and about 30 missiles in the mix. Numbers that sound like a video game until you realize each track on the radar is a real warhead, and each impact site has an address. We've seen this playbook before, winter as a weapon, but the volume tonight is a throwback to the darkest months of the war. And yet, even as the smoke thins, repair teams are already on the lines, stringing copper like lifelines, while the Air Force tallies the intercepts that kept a blackout from becoming a catastrophe. If the Russian message was, "We can still turn off your lights," Ukraine replies with a different medium: video. Not from a TV studio, but from the waterline. Grainy horizon-low POV that begins with the sea slapping the lens and ends in a flower of fire on a tanker's stern. In the Black Sea, Ukrainian sea drones hammer a shadow fleet giant, the Dashan, a sanctions-dodging workhorse that's been feeding Russian petrodollars through murky flags and silent transponders. The clips are shockingly intimate. The whine of electric motors, the ship's red hull growing across the frame, the final whiteout as the feed dies. Maritime security sources confirm the hit. Analysts verify the ship's identity by matching deck gear and cranes. The message is simple enough to understand. If you bankroll the war, you're in the war. Let's rewind a few hours on the same timeline and a few hundred kilometers to the east, where ground war keeps its own rhythm. Near Pokrovsk, there's the unmistakable choreography of combined arms. BMPs and tanks nosing forward under smears of smoke, quadcopters buzzing low, counter-drone masts bristling, jammers humming. Russia throws a heavy mechanized punch, the biggest inside that embattled city to date. 30-odd vehicles probing for a seam and trying to turn pressure into collapse. It's classic doctrine, dressed for 2025 and fought under drones that see everything. The result? A churned strip of snow-dark mud, burning hulks, and a front line that scarcely bends. Ukraine claims the assault breaks against layered fires guided by UAVs. Independent coverage confirms a large-scale push and equally fierce resistance. The city remains a knife fight, not a prize ribbon. And then there's Crimea, still the most expensive square on the board. Ukrainian intelligence units publish night vision snippets and thermal pops, claiming hits on Russian radar nodes, Podlyot, Nebo-M, even the prized S-400 ecosystem that knits together the peninsula's air picture. OSINT sleuths pore over satellite shots and before and afters. The geolocation community flags a collapsed dome here, a scorched pad there. It's not just the hardware, it's what it means when early warning eyes go blind. If Ukraine keeps punching holes in the radar net, the Black Sea becomes less of a fortress and more of a hallway. The claims look credible, some backed by imagery, but a caution flag stays up. In this war, even good video needs map pins and shadows at the right angle to graduate from claim to fact. That's the snapshot. Now, let's run the film. If you're still watching, by the way, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. The detailed, patient ones who don't just want explosions, you want consequences. So, consider subscribing now so you don't miss the next breakdown. Let's get back to how this changes the game. Odessa's blackout is engineered, not accidental. Russia isn't shooting at random. It's aiming at transformers, peaker plants, grid nodes, the quiet machinery that turns electrons into civilization. We've seen this method in previous winters. The logic is brutal and mundane. Stress the grid, force rolling outages, make people cold, and the state spend. But it's 2025, and Ukraine's air defenders are now a composable orchestra. Patriots watching the high sky, IRSTs and NASAMs playing Waka Cruise, Gepards swatting down Shaheds like giant mechanical house cats. It doesn't stop the pain, but it blunts the strategy. Yes, 1 million+ customers lose power around Odessa. Yes, water trucks roll. Yes, emergency crews dig people out from debris. And yet, by afternoon, you see a familiar pattern. Mayor's office posts, partially restored. National grid operator toggling supplies. The light-by-light reconquest of a city. For Russia, the cost of a salvo like this is measured not just in missiles, but in how little they move the strategic needle. Meanwhile, the sea drones are changing the insurance math of the Black Sea. The Deshan isn't just a hull, it's a symbol of a shadow logistics chain that runs on grey flags and blank AIS screens. Striking it accomplishes 3 goals at once. First, it physically sidelines a sanctions-busting tanker. Second, it raises war risk premiums for any ship owner tempted to play murky games. Third, and this is the clever bit, it pushes the conflict's costs back onto Russia's balance sheet by threatening the revenue pipeline. The footage, vetted by major outlets through deck layout analysis, gives the story authority that statements alone can't. And the SBU's proud confirmation tells you this wasn't a rogue shot, it's a campaign. 3 tankers in 2 weeks is a campaign tempo. You don't need a maritime law degree to see the pressure spreading from the front line to bank loans in Piraeus. There's also a psychological tilt here. For months, Russia wanted the Black Sea to feel like a lake, with Ukraine walled off, shipping cowed, Sevastopol secure. But the theater has inverted. Sea drones don't care about closed areas. They're fast, cheap, and happy to work at night. They film their own victory reels, and they don't demand medal ceremonies. And, unlike human commandos, the worst case scenario for a sea drone is you lose the robot. If you're an insurer, that's not an abstract point. It's a spreadsheet cell that suddenly turns red. Back on land, the Pokrovsk fighting is a laboratory lesson in modern combined arms. What works, what doesn't, and which 20th century truths survive in a 21st century battlespace. Russia tries to use bad weather as cover, knowing Ukraine's small drones hate heavy wind, sleet, and freezing fog. It picks a dawn window, then pushes in waves. Armor in front, dismounted infantry trailing, EW vehicles trying to blind the hovering spotters. Ukraine counters with its own playbook. Scatterable FPVs, loitering munitions cued on likely approach routes, artillery keyed to drone eyes, and mobile groups hunting the wounded vehicles that try to reverse. The result isn't a World War II tableau. It's a network fight where the first node to lose connectivity gets punished. The battle maps do their usual hopscotch, 1 block forward, 2 trenches back. But the general picture holds. Ugly losses for marginal ground, no sudden breakthrough. Another reminder that mass without protected mobility is just a bigger target. Let's talk Crimea radar, because it's arcane and weirdly fascinating. Systems like 48 YA6 K1 Podlyot and ORL-MM modules from Nebo M aren't glamorous. They're the eyes and ears feeding the batteries that do the shooting. Blind a battery, and you don't just save your pilots and drones, you also force the enemy to choose between 2 bad options. Keep radars off and go deaf, or turn them on and become a beacon. Ukraine's Intel Arm claims several such hits in late summer and early fall, and OSINT shows damage consistent with the claims. Ruptured radomes, charred footprints where trailers once stood, debris fields that match the kit. Some of the documentation comes from government-linked outlets, some from independent mappers. Not all can be fully verified independently yet, but in aggregate, they sketch a plausible campaign. Pry open Crimean air defences, 1 sensor at a time, then exploit those corridors with bigger punches. It's chess with antennas. Now zoom out and stitch these threads together. Russia's winter energy offensive is meant to sap will and resources. Ukraine's maritime interdiction is meant to sap finances and prestige. The Pokrovsk grind is where bodies and machines are spent for posture and position. Crimea's radar war is how you set conditions for surprise. Tomorrow strikes paid for today by knocking out the eyes that would have seen them coming. In each arena, winning looks different. Sometimes it's a substation humming again before dawn. Sometimes it's a burning ship listing in a sea lane insurers now treat like a haunted house. Sometimes it's a mechanized column that advances 3 blocks and leaves 12 wrecks behind. Dramatic visuals matter, and both sides know it. Russia publishes rocket camera clips and precision strike angles. Ukraine releases cockpit HUDs and drone POVs that feel like found footage from a cyberpunk heist. The Dashan video is perfect modern propaganda, not because it's fake, but because it's true and cinematic at the same time. The Odessa blackout has its own awful cinematography. Phone cameras scanning black apartments. The odd window, a lonely square of warmth. In Pokrovsk, there's the drone shot you've probably seen. Thermal silhouettes darting between garages, a BMP nosing past a corner, a bright flash when a shaped charge kisses armor. Strategically, Russia's choice to spend expensive missiles on infrastructure this deep into the winter tells you 2 things. First, missile stocks are sufficient for periodic shock nights, especially when bulked out with cheap Shaheds. Second, Moscow still believes power cuts can force political outcomes faster than the front line can. It's coercion at the household level. But Ukraine's counter is persistent. Diversify generation, disperse repair stockpiles, harden nodes, and widen the air defense umbrella with Western systems and domestic production. Even on nights when the grid groans, the repair curve keeps getting steeper. In other words, the lights come back faster than they used to. At sea, you can already see second-order effects. War risk premiums spike. Captains who once ran dark in grey zones now ask themselves whether a shipment is worth an unscheduled rendezvous with a camera-equipped torpedo that tweets. And beyond insurance spreadsheets, there's geopolitics. Attacks on the Shadow Fleet complicate relations with coastal states and test the patience of countries quietly tolerating sanctioned flows. Ukraine's calculus is that the legal and diplomatic turbulence is a price worth paying to hurt Russia's war wallet. So far, the campaign has legs, and the footage keeps landing on the front pages. Pokrovsk remains the grinder. If Russia takes it, the map shifts and the headlines will spike. If Ukraine holds, Russia's attrition bill grows and the headlines spike anyway. An uncomfortable truth for both. The side that better fuses drones, EW, armour, artillery and infantry at the lowest tactical echelons wins more often. Micro-combined arms, not just battalion art on a sand table. This week's large push showed Russia can still mass steel. It also showed that without persistent drone overwatch and fast, protected infantry exploitation, the best you get is a smoky cul-de-sac. Ukraine's defenders, for their part, still need munitions and rotation capacity to turn tactical stops into operational relief. The winter forecast is simple. More of the same, only colder. And in Crimea, the radar campaign's significance actually loops back to Odessa and the grid. Knock out enough sensors, and you don't just set up strikes on air bases, you complicate Russia's ability to vector long-range interceptors and patrols, which, in turn, opens space for Ukraine to threaten the very launch systems used against energy infrastructure. Think of it as a pressure triangle. Protect the grid, starve the fleet, blind the peninsula. If Kyiv keeps all 3 legs alive, it doesn't win the war in a cinematic finale. It wins in a long, dismal tug that ends when Moscow's resources, patience, or both fray past the breaking point. Of course, claims demand receipts. That's why you'll keep seeing caveats, and you should want them. The Dashan hit was verified by reputable outlets using visual signatures and maritime sources. The Odessa numbers come from the Ukrainian president and Air Force, repeated by international reporters and corroborated by footage of the aftermath. The Pokrovsk assault is described by both Ukrainian units and independent watchers, with imagery to match. The radar kills in Crimea, some are now backed by OSINT satellite shots, others are still in likely territory, waiting for high-res confirms. Patience beats propaganda. There's a deeper moral buried in this week's reels. Russia thought a winter air blitz would make people surrender to the thermostat. Ukraine thought sea drones and radar hunting would make the war feel smaller and more expensive for the aggressor. Both are right about one thing: pressure works, but endurance works better. Odessa's candles don't equal capitulation. A tanker burning at sea doesn't mean Russia can't export oil, but it does mean every trip now feels like a dare. A failed push in Pokrovsk doesn't end the offensive, but it does teach new respect for defenders who've turned quadcopters into artillery spotters and lawnmowers into EW carts. And a blinded radar in Crimea doesn't empty the sky, but it does make the next strike harder to stop. So here's where we end tonight. A city that refuses to stay dark, a ship that can't hide in the grey, a front line that refuses to crack, and a peninsula learning that being a fortress is harder when your sentries keep getting their binoculars broken. If Russia thought winter would be its ally, Ukraine just introduced it to some very cold math. The question left for all of us is simple and uncomfortable. How many more nights like this can either side afford? And when the lights come back on, because they will, what will they reveal next?